Hello, and a very warm welcome to this deep dive. We're really glad you're here.
Absolutely. Great to be diving into another topic. And today, well, we've got a really practical topic lined up, haven't we?
We certainly do. We are going to untack, really get into the weeds of mastering the English job interview.
A big one for so many people, and quite nerve-wracking too, often.
Totally. So our main source today is a transcript from a YouTube video. It's called English Job Interview Do's and Don'ts, English Conversation Practice, and it's from the Rachel's English channel. Really solid resource.
Oh yeah, Rachel's English is fantastic for learners. This video in particular is super helpful because it uses a mock interview. You see it all play out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while it's maybe geared a bit towards English language learners interviewing in the U.S., honestly, the stuff we'll talk about, it's valuable for almost anyone in a professional setting.
That's so true. Good communication, making a good impression. That's universal, isn't it?
It really is. So our mission today, for you listening, is to equip you with practical know-how, key phrases, strategies, things you can actually use to feel more confident walking into an English job interview, especially, in the American context.
Mm-hmm. And even if you're not job hunting right this second, stick around. The insights into just, professional interaction, how Americans communicate in these settings, that's useful anytime.
Definitely. Think of this as like a step-by-step guide based on that video. We'll cover the whole flow.
Right. Starting from the very beginning, the hello, the handshake, that initial small talk.
Yeah, the small talk. Often overlooked, but super important for setting the tone. Then we'll tackle the big questions.
Oh, the classics. Tell me about yourself. Everyone's favorite, right?
Huh. Or maybe least favorite. We'll break that down. Also, how did you hear about this position? What attracted you to our company? The motivation questions.
Yep. And then getting into strengths and the dreaded weakness question.
The weakness question. We'll definitely spend some time on how to handle that one without, shooting yourself in the foot.
And things like, tell me about a time you faced a setback. Those behavioral questions.
Right. Plus, where do you see yourself in 5 years, looking ahead? Yeah. And crucially, what happens at the end when they turn it back to you? Do you have any questions for me?
Such an important part. It's your chance to interview them, in a way.
Exactly. And beyond the Q&A, we'll look at the nonverbals, too. That handshake again, posture, how you look, your facial expressions, even a little bit about using humor.
Yeah, those subtle things can make a surprising difference. It's the whole package, really.
It really is. So we're aiming to give you actionable takeaways, make this really practical, ready to jump in.
Let's do it. Okay, so the beginning, setting the stage, that first contact.
Right. The video transcript kicks off with the interviewer, Tom Kelly, greeting the interviewee, Rachel Smith, and the first physical interaction is the handshake.
Mm-hmm. And the commentary in the video emphasizes this. In American professional culture, you're aiming for a handshake that's firm, confident.
Not like a dead fish handshake.
Definitely not. No limp fish, but also not a bone crusher either. You're not trying to dominate them.
Okay. Firm, confident, respectful. Got it. That first nonverbal signal.
Exactly. It says, I'm present, I'm professional. Then immediately after, usually comes the small talk.
Ah, yes, the small talk. Why do interviewers even do this? Is it a test?
Well, yes and no. It's not usually a test of knowledge, but it serves a really important purpose, as the video highlights. It's about building comfort, rapport.
Breaking the ice, basically.
Precisely. Easing that initial tension. Interviews can be inherently stressful. A little light conversation beforehand helps both people relax a bit before diving into the serious questions.
Makes sense? So what kind of topics are safe ground here? The video mentioned a few.
Yeah, typical safe topics include just asking how they're doing, a simple, how are you? You could comment briefly on your journey there, traffic wasn't too bad today, or something simple.
The weather is always a classic, isn't it?
The ultimate safe topic. Or maybe a quick mention of the weekend, if it's a Monday, for example. Did you have a good weekend?
Okay, so keep it light, keep it neutral, and the key is how you answer, right? The video stressed, keeping it brief.
Brief, polite, and positive. That's the formula. You don't need to launch into a 5-minute monologue about your terrible commute or your wild weekend party.
Right, haha. Probably best not to mention the wild party.
Probably not. A short, pleasant answer is usually perfect. I'm doing great, thank you. Or, my weekend was nice and relaxing, thanks.
And the video had a neat tip about turning the question back to the interviewer.
Yes, that's a really good point. It shows you're engaged, makes it feel more like a two-way street, even in these early moments.
So if they ask, how are you? You answer and then say,
I'm doing well, thank you. And you? Or, my weekend was lovely, thanks. How was yours? Simple reciprocity.
Nice. It shows conversational awareness. The transcript had an example between Tom and Rachel, didn't it?
It did. Very brief. They touched on the weather, I think, and the weekend. Rachel mentioned a picnic.
Right, a family picnic. Sounded nice. And Tom said he got some work done.
Exactly. Super ordinary stuff. But as the video points out, the content isn't the main thing. It's the process. It's about warming up the interaction.
Humanizing it before you get into the job-specific stuff.
Precisely. So the takeaway for listeners: have a couple of simple positive answers ready for those common small talk openers. And don't be afraid to politely ask the question back. It helps build that initial positive connection.
Good advice.
Okay.
Okay, so the small talk is done. You're both settled in a bit. Then often comes that big open-ended question. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where do you even begin with that one? It feels huge.
It really does feel overwhelming, doesn't it? Like, where do I start? My childhood. But the video transcript does a great job clarifying what the interviewer is actually looking for here.
Okay, what's the real goal behind the question?
It's primarily about your professional story, your relevant education, your work history, the experiences, and maybe even interests that directly connect to the job you're applying for.
So it's a focused narrative.
Yeah.
Not just random facts.
Exactly. It's your professional highlight reel, tailored for this specific audience, this specific job. They want a concise overview of who you are professionally.
Okay. And the video gave some pointers on how to structure it, like what elements to include.
Yeah, it suggested starting points, like mentioning your degrees, what you studied, where, maybe when you graduated.
Right, like Rachel did. University of Florida, Master's in Toy Design, 2010.
Yep. Then, talking about your work experience. How many years at a company, what your role was. Again, Rachel mentioned 5 years at Happy Kids Creative as director of toy production.
And she did that clever thing of adding a result, didn't she? The sales growth.
Absolutely. Quantifying achievements whenever possible is huge. It makes your contribution concrete. Sales grew during my time there is okay, but adding a percentage or a specific outcome is much more powerful.
Good point. And then she explained why she was looking for a new job. That seemed important too.
Very important. And notice how she framed it. She said she was seeking new opportunities because of a lack of growth potential at her current place.
So it wasn't, I hate my boss or the company is sinking.
Exactly. It was framed positively, a desire for growth, for new challenges. That sounds ambitious and motivated, not disgruntled. It's a much better look.
Definitely. And she finished by linking her skills to the potential new role.
Yes, she highlighted her experience leading creative teams and finding new markets.
Yeah.
Directly relevant skills. So the structure was sort of education, recent role and achievements, reason for looking, relevant skill summary.
That's a really helpful breakdown. It gives it shape.
It does, and the video really hammered home the importance of practicing this answer. Not memorizing, but practicing.
Why the emphasis on practice for this one specifically?
Because it's often the first substantive question you get. It sets the tone for the rest of the interview. If you stumble or ramble here, it's hard to recover. Practicing helps you deliver it smoothly and confidently.
And the video suggested recording yourself. That sounds slightly painful, but probably useful.
It can feel awkward. But it's incredibly valuable. You hear your own pace, your clarity, you catch nervous habits. Maybe you say, way more than you realize, or you fidget.
True. It's like getting objective feedback. And timing. Did it mention how long this answer should ideally be?
Yeah, the guidance was generally around 1 minute. Maybe slightly more, slightly less, but roughly in that ballpark.
A minute seems reasonable. Enough time to cover the key points without losing their attention.
Exactly. You want to be concise but impactful. And the key with practice, again, isn't to memorize a script word for word. That sounds robotic.
Right. So what's the alternative?
The video suggested identifying your key phrases, the core facts, skills, achievements, and practicing weaving them together naturally. Free talking around those key points.
Okay, so know your bullet points, but let the connecting language flow more spontaneously.
Precisely. That way, you sound prepared, but also genuine and conversational. It takes practice to get that balance right, but it's worth it.
Makes total sense. Confidence and clarity without sounding like you're reading from a card.
That's the goal.
All right, moving on.
Yeah.
Another very common one. How did you hear about this position? Seems pretty straightforward, right? What's the interviewer really learning here?
It does seem simple on the surface, but it gives them a few useful clues. It tells them something about your job search methods. Are you actively networking? Are you researching companies directly? Where do you look for opportunities?
Okay. So it shows your level of initiative and resourcefulness in a way.
Exactly. And maybe indicates if you have connections within the company already. The video listed some typical answers,
What?
things like, a current employee, name recommended I apply, or I saw the posting on LinkedIn and it caught my eye, or maybe I found it on the careers section of your website while researching companies in this industry, or even a friend who works at another company mentioned you were hiring.
Okay, various channels. And Rachel, in the mock interview, what was her answer?
She mentioned a friend shared the posting on LinkedIn, but then she added a couple more layers.
Oh, yeah. What else?
She said she then went to the company website herself to do more research, and she also mentioned reading a relevant article about the company in Business Weekly.
Ah, that's smart. It shows she didn't just passively receive the link. She proactively followed up and did her homework. Multi-pronged approach.
Precisely. It adds a bit more weight to her interest, but even a simple, direct answer is fine for this question. The main thing is to be clear.
And the video, again, mentioned practicing this one out loud, even for a simple question.
Yes, especially focusing on clarity and pronunciation. If you mention a person's name or the company name itself, or maybe a specific platform like LinkedIn, you want to say it clearly and correctly.
Good point. Mispronouncing the company's name isn't a great start.
Not ideal. And the video had a really practical tip for words you find tricky.
What was that?
To isolate those words and practice them slowly, focusing on the mouth movements, the sounds, then gradually speed up, build that muscle memory for the pronunciation.
Like doing drills for tricky words.
Mm-hmm.
Seems sensible, especially if English isn't your first language or if it involves unfamiliar names.
Exactly. A little bit of focused pronunciation practice can make a big difference in sounding confident and clear. It smooths out potential bumps.
Okay, clear and confident pronunciation. Got it. Next up, what attracted you to our company? This feels like a really important one.
It absolutely is. This is where you show you've done your homework and that your interest is genuine, not just generic.
It's separating yourself from candidates who are just applying everywhere without much thought.
Precisely. It shows specific motivation for this company. The interviewer wants to know, why us? What is it about our organization that resonates with you?
And the video offered some good ways to start the answer, some strong opening phrases.
Yes, it highlighted phrases that express a strong positive reaction to something specific you've learned. For instance, I was really impressed by your company's commitment to renewable energy. Or, I'm very excited about the strong support you provide for your research department.
So starting with a specific positive point you admire.
Exactly. Another example was, I really appreciate how the company encourages employees to interact and collaborate outside of just formal meetings. It shows you've looked into their values, their culture, their strategic priorities.
Okay. And Rachel's answer in the example, what does she focus on?
She talked about the company's focus on growth and innovation. She mentioned appreciating their ambitious goals, but also that they seem to have clear plans to achieve them.
So strategic direction.
Mm-hmm. And she also touched on the support for employees, specifically mentioning their continuing education initiatives.
Linking it back to employee development. That shows she's thought about what it would be like to work there.
Right. Her answer showed she'd researched their business strategy and their company culture and found aspects of both that appealed to her and aligned with her own values.
And surprise, surprise, the advice is to practice this one too.
You guessed it. Practice articulating why you're interested. Even if they don't ask this exact question, the thinking process helps.
How so?
Because the reasons that attract you to the company are often relevant to other questions too, like why this role or what do you know about us? Having those points clear in your mind allows you to weave them in naturally elsewhere.
Okay, so the prep work serves multiple purposes. It's about building a core message about your fit with the company.
Exactly. It's about showing genuine, informed interest. Not just flattery, but specific, well-researched reasons for wanting to be part of their team.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears to talking about you again. What would you say is your greatest strength? This feels like an opportunity, right?
It's definitely an opportunity. This is
Yeah.
your chance to shine a light on your best professional qualities. But you need to do it effectively.
How so? What's the recommended approach?
The video suggested a clear two-part structure. First, clearly state the strength. Then, crucially, explain how that strength helps you in your work or professional life. Give it context.
So don't just say, I'm organized. Explain why being organized is a valuable strength in a work context.
Precisely. The video even gave a template. My greatest strength is strength. I find that this is very important when I'm situation where strength applies.
Oh, that's helpful. Can you get the example they used?
Yeah, it was. My greatest strength is flexibility. I find that this is very important when I'm working with lots of different people and opinions. See how it connects the strength to a real-world work scenario.
Yeah, that makes it much more concrete and believable. What did Rachel say was her strength?
She actually combined two related strengths, enthusiasm and persistence.
Okay, enthusiasm and persistence. How did she elaborate?
She talked about having a strong work ethic, the ability to push through challenges without getting easily frustrated.
Resilience, basically.
And she also mentioned that her positive attitude tends to rub off on others, helping to motivate the team.
Ah, so she explained the impact of her strength on both her own work and the team environment. That's quite effective.
Very effective. It's not just bragging, it's demonstrating value. And the preparation advice here was interesting too.
What did they suggest for prepping the strength answer?
They recommended actually writing down a list of your strengths and then brainstorming specific examples of when you've demonstrated each one, really thinking it through.
So self-reflection is key.
Yeah.
But again, not memorizing a paragraph.
Right. The idea is to have the core ideas and examples clear in your mind so you can talk about them freely and naturally rather than reciting a pre-written speech.
And focus on maybe just one or two key strengths in the interview itself, not rattle off a whole list.
Exactly. Pick the one or two strengths that are most relevant to the job you're interviewing for. Go deep on those, explain their impact, rather than giving a superficial overview of many qualities. Quality over quantity, again.
Choose your strongest cards and play them well.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, now for the flip side, and often a more challenging type of question, the behavioral ones.
Huh?
Like, tell me about a time where you suffered a setback and had to maintain your enthusiasm. How do you even approach that?
Yeah, these behavioral questions are designed to understand how you actually act in certain situations based on past experience. The idea is that past behavior predicts future behavior.
So they want a real story, a specific example.
Exactly. Not a hypothetical. Well, I would, probably. They want to hear about something that actually happened, and the video listed several variations of this type of question.
What other kinds of scenarios might they ask about?
Things like dealing with difficult clients or maybe challenging coworkers, how you responded during a crisis or unexpected problem, a time you had to give someone difficult feedback, or even a situation where you disagreed with your boss or a decision.
Okay, so basically how you handle pressure, conflict, or adversity.
Pretty much. It's about your problem-solving skills, your resilience, your emotional intelligence, your communication under pressure.
And Rachel's answer in the video, how did she tackle the setback question?
She gave a really good, detailed example. It followed what's often called the STAR method, though the video didn't explicitly label it.
STAR method, what's that?
It stands for Situation, Task, Action, Result. It's a structured way to answer behavioral questions.
Okay, so situation. What was Rachel's situation?
The situation was a major setback on a new toy project she was leading. A big competitor launched a very similar toy much earlier than expected, potentially ruining their launch.
Ouch. Okay, that's definitely a setback. What was the task?
Well, the implicit task was to salvage the project, overcome this challenge, and keep her team motivated despite the bad news.
Right. And the action. What did she do?
This is where her answer really shone. Instead of panicking, she reframed it. She presented the competitor's launch not as a disaster, but as an opportunity to learn. She challenged her team to analyze the competitor's toy, find its weaknesses.
Turning defense into offense. Smart.
Exactly. Then they took those insights, the competitor's weak points, and incorporated improvements into their own toy design.
Okay, so that was the core action. Analysis and adaptation.
Yeah.
And the result.
The result was that they launched a superior product. It addressed the weaknesses of the competitor's toy, performed well in the market, and the project was ultimately a success despite the initial setback.
Wow, that's a great story. It shows resilience, leadership, strategic thinking, everything they'd want to see.
Absolutely. It turned a potential negative into a clear, positive demonstration of her skills. And notice how she specifically addressed the maintain enthusiasm part by explaining how she reframed the situation for her team.
Yeah, that was key. So the advice here must be to prepare several STAR stories.
Definitely. Think about different types of challenges you've faced, setbacks, conflicts, difficult tasks, and map them out using that situation, task, action, result structure. Practice telling those stories.
So you have them ready, regardless of the specific behavioral question they ask.
Right. Having a few solid examples prepared helps you build the vocabulary you need and makes you feel much more confident tackling whatever variation of the question comes your way. You can adapt your prepared stories to fit the specific question asked.
Prepare your key narratives. Good strategy. Okay, now for the really tricky one for many people. What do you consider your greatest weakness? Oh, how do you answer this honestly without disqualifying yourself?
Uh-huh. Yeah, this one requires a very careful balancing act. It's probably one of the most dreaded questions. But the goal isn't to trip you up, usually.
What is the goal then?
According to the video, it's primarily about assessing your self-awareness. Do you know yourself? Can you identify areas where you need to improve? And, crucially, are you doing anything about it?
So it's less about the weakness itself and more about your ability to recognize it and work on it.
Exactly. Honesty is important, but so is demonstrating a commitment to growth and self-improvement. You don't want to sound like you think you're perfect, but you also don't want to raise a major red flag.
Okay. The video suggested a structure for this answer too, right?
Yes, a three-part structure. First, state the weakness. Be genuine, but maybe choose something that isn't absolutely critical to the core function of the job, if possible.
Okay, state the weakness. Then what?
Second, briefly explain how it manifests, perhaps in a work context. And third, this is the most important part. Explain the concrete steps you are actively taking to improve or mitigate that weakness.
Ah, the improvement plan. That shows proactivity.
Absolutely essential. It turns the answer from a negative admission into a positive story about development.
How did Rachel handle this in the mock interview? Did she start with that chocolate joke?
She did. She started with a little lighthearted deflection, chocolate, which can work sometimes just to break the tension momentarily.
Okay, a brief moment of humor. But then she got serious.
Yes, she quickly pivoted to her real answer. Public speaking.
Public speaking. That feels like a fairly safe, relatable weakness for many people.
It often is. It's common, and unless the job is purely public speaking, it might not be a deal breaker, especially if you show you're working on it.
How did she explain how it manifests and what she's doing about it?
She explained she's fine in smaller meetings, comfortable with her team, but gets stage fright in front of large audiences or in formal presentations.
Okay, specific context.
And then she talked about actively seeking opportunities to practice, maybe taking courses, and expressing a genuine desire to become more comfortable and effective because she recognized it was important for career growth.
So she acknowledged it, contextualized it, and outlined her improvement strategy. That fits the structure perfectly.
It does. And the interviewer's reaction in the video was interesting, too.
What did Tom, the interviewer, say?
He said something like, "Fear of public speaking is very common. I'm in the same boat on that one."
Ah, so it was relatable. That probably helped build rapport, didn't it?
Absolutely. It shows that choosing a common, understandable weakness and framing it constructively can actually work quite well. It makes you seem human and self-aware.
So the takeaway, be honest, but strategic. Choose a real weakness, but frame it around your efforts to improve. And maybe avoid saying your weakness is like, I work too hard.
Yeah, the humble brag weakness. Interviewers see right through that one usually. Authenticity, paired with demonstrated self-improvement, is key.
Good advice. Okay, let's look ahead. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are they trying to figure out with this question?
This one gives them insight into a few things. Your career ambitions, your understanding of potential career paths within their company or industry, and whether your goals align with what the company can realistically offer.
So they want to see if you've thought about your future and if it fits with their future.
Exactly. Do you have realistic expectations for growth? Are you ambitious? Does this role seem like a logical step towards your longer-term goals or just a temporary stopgap?
The video mentioned thinking about 1-year and 10-year goals too, as context.
Yeah, just as a way to frame your thinking. Knowing your shorter-term and longer-term aspirations helps you place that 5-year mark more realistically.
And the suggested way to start the answer was pretty direct.
Yep. Something simple like, in 5 years, I would like to be, or I see myself. Clear and forward-looking.
What was Rachel's 5-year vision in the mock interview?
She expressed interest in growth, aiming for a position potentially at the vice president level. She specifically mentioned wanting more responsibility and development and leading larger initiatives.
Ambitious, but possibly realistic depending on the company structure. Did she connect it back to anything else?
Yes, very cleverly she linked it back to her weakness. She acknowledged that a VP role would require more significant public speaking.
Bringing it full circle.
She reiterated her commitment to working on that skill, essentially saying, I know this is required for where I want to go, and I'm already taking steps to be ready for it.
That shows foresight and reinforces her commitment to improvement. Very well played.
It really ties things together nicely, and again, the advice is...
Guess.
practice it out loud.
You got it. Practicing helps you articulate those future goals clearly and concisely. It reduces the chance of rambling or sounding unsure during the actual interview. It helps you refine the message.
Clarity and confidence about your future plans. Makes sense. Okay, we're getting towards the end of the typical interview flow now. That moment when the interviewer says, "So, do you have any questions for me?"
This feels like a critical point.
It absolutely is critical. The video stresses this heavily. This is not the time to just say, "Nope, I think you covered everything."
Why is asking questions so important?
Several reasons. First, it shows you were engaged in listening throughout the interview. Second, it demonstrates your genuine interest in the role and the company. You've thought enough about it to have questions. Third, it's your best opportunity to gather information to decide if this job and company are actually a good fit for you.
Right, it's a two-way street. You're evaluating them too.
Exactly. So declining to ask questions can signal lack of preparation, lack of interest, or lack of critical thinking. You should always have questions prepared.
And the advice is to prepare them beforehand and practice asking them.
Definitely prepare them in advance. Think about what you genuinely want or need to know about the position, the team, the company culture, expectations, challenges, opportunities for growth. Write them down. And yes, practice asking them clearly.
What if the interviewer already answered your prepared questions during the conversation?
That's a great point, and it happens often. That's why active listening is crucial. You can acknowledge that. Actually, you already touched upon my question about X, which was helpful. But ideally, you should have more than one or two questions prepared or be ready to ask insightful follow-up questions based on what was discussed.
Okay, adaptability is key. Rachel asked some really good ones in the video, didn't she?
She really did. Her first one was excellent. She asked something like, imagine you're looking back a year from now on this hiring decision. The person you hired has exceeded all your expectations. What did they do that impressed you the most?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. What's so good about it?
It gets right to the heart of what success looks like in this role, beyond just the job description. It forces the interviewer to define top performance in concrete terms. It shows you're focused on exceeding expectations, not just meeting them.
Brilliant. What was the interviewer's response to that?
Tom mentioned the ideal candidate would spend time learning from the team first, understanding the current situation before trying to make big changes. Then they'd bring new ideas and energy to drive innovation and growth, which he'd mentioned was lacking.
Okay, so that gives Rachel really valuable insight into the expected approach. Learn first, then lead change. What else did she ask?
She asked a more standard but still important question. Can you tell me a little bit more about the team that I would be working with?
Good one for understanding dynamics, size, maybe roles within the team.
Exactly. And based on the answer, she asked a follow-up, which showed she was listening carefully.
What was the follow-up?
She tactfully asked about the reason for recent turnover in team leadership, which the interviewer had alluded to.
Ooh, that's a bit more direct, but important information to have. How did the interviewer handle it?
He was quite honest. He mentioned the previous leaders were internal hires who perhaps didn't bring enough fresh perspective, and reiterated the hope that a new hire would bring new energy to tackle the growth issue.
That honesty is valuable. It gives a clearer picture of the challenges and expectations.
Absolutely. And Rachel's polite closing remarks after getting these answers also made a good impression.
What did she say?
Something like, "That makes sense. I really appreciate you considering me. I'd love to be part of the company achieving its goals." Positive, appreciative, reiterating enthusiasm.
So the quality of your questions and how you handle the answers leaves that final impression.
It really does. It shows you're thoughtful, engaged, and serious about the opportunity and making the right decision.
Okay, so we've covered the verbal back and forth extensively, but the video also highlighted nonverbal communication. That's running throughout the entire interview, isn't it?
Constantly. Your body language is always communicating something, whether you intend it to or not.
Let's start with the handshake again, the one at the end. Same rules apply as the beginning.
Pretty much. Firm, confident, respectful, make eye contact. It's the closing, non-verbal statement.
And posture. What did the video advise there?
Sit upright, appear alert and energetic. Avoid slumping, which can signal boredom or lack of confidence. But don't be ramrod straight and stiff either. That looks uncomfortable and unnatural.
Find the balance. Engaged but relaxed.
That's a good way to put it. Project confidence and approachability.
Facial expressions seem huge, too. What's the general advice for American interviews?
The video emphasized looking engaged, interested, and generally positive, smiling naturally at appropriate times, maintaining good eye contact without staring intensely. A friendly, open demeanor is usually very well received.
So even if you're nervous, try to project warmth and interest.
Exactly. Nodding occasionally while the interviewer is talking also shows you're listening actively and understanding. These small signals reinforce your engagement.
It's all part of showing you're present and invested in the conversation.
Precisely.
Now, the video mentioned humor briefly, with Rachel's chocolate joke. What's the verdict on using humor in an interview? Risky.
It can be a little risky, so the advice is generally to use it sparingly and carefully. Rachel's lighthearted moment worked okay because it was brief and relatable.
So, probably not the time to try out your new stand-up routine.
Definitely not. The video suggested maybe 1 or 2 brief, appropriate moments of light humor might help show your personality and build rapport, but it shouldn't distract from your professional message.
Keep it minimal and relevant if you use it at all. The focus should remain on your qualifications and fit for the role.
Exactly. Don't let jokes overshadow your substance.
Okay. And the mock interview ended with that final handshake, maybe a little more small talk as they walked to the door.
Yes, the idea being that hopefully the interviewee feels more comfortable and confident by the end than they did at the very beginning. The whole process, ideally, should help build that connection.
Right. So to kind of wrap up the key takeaways from this whole deep dive, based on the Rachel's English video, it really covers the interview from start to finish.
It does. We talked about the importance of that initial greeting, the handshake, using small talk effectively to build rapport.
Then we broke down how to approach those common questions. Tell me about yourself. How'd you hear about us? Why our company? Focusing on structure and relevance.
Tackling strengths with specific examples of impact, handling the weakness question by focusing on self-awareness and improvement.
Right, and using the STAR method for behavioral questions about setbacks or challenges, telling those compelling stories.
Thinking about your future goals with the 5 years question and the absolute necessity of preparing and asking your own insightful questions at the end.
And underpinning all of that is the nonverbal communication posture, facial expressions, eye contact, the handshake again, projecting confidence and engagement.
And of course, the core message throughout. Preparation and practice are key. Not memorizing, but internalizing your key points and practicing articulating them naturally.
That practice element, especially recording yourself, seems like such a valuable, practical tip listeners can use right away.
It really is. It provides feedback you just can't get otherwise. It helps you refine everything, your words, your tone, your body language.
And you mentioned earlier, it's worth listeners thinking about how these American interview norms might compare to interviews in their own cultures.
Absolutely. Things like the expected level of formality, the directness of communication, the emphasis on self-promotion, like talking about strengths, even the role of small talk, these can vary quite a bit culturally.
So being aware of the specific expectations in the U.S. context, as outlined in the video, is really helpful for navigating it successfully.
Definitely. It helps you adapt your style appropriately.
And that final point you made about the interview being a two-way street seems crucial for managing nerves, too. It's not just them judging you.
It's so important to remember you are also there to evaluate them. Is this company, this role, this team, this manager the right fit for you and your career goals? Asking good questions helps you figure that out.
So approach it with confidence, yes, but also with genuine curiosity. You're gathering information, too.
Exactly. It shifts the power dynamics slightly in your own mind, which can be empowering. See it as a mutual exploration of fit.
That's a great mindset to have. Prepare well, be yourself, be engaged, ask smart questions, and remember you're evaluating them just as much as they're evaluating you.
That sums it up perfectly. If you do all that, drawing on the kinds of insights from resources like the Rachel's English video, you'll be putting your best foot forward.
Well, this has been incredibly thorough. We've really gone deep into the nuts and bolts of the English job interview today.
Hopefully it provides a really solid framework and lots of practical tips for anyone facing this process.
I think it does. So a huge thank you to everyone who stayed with us through this detailed exploration. We really appreciate you tuning in.
Yes, thank you for your time and attention.